Today's featured sustainable brown girl is Christine Platt, author of the Afrominimalist Guide to Living with Less, a radical re-envisioning of minimalism that focuses on authenticity over aesthetics. Christine's book is a resource for anyone seeking to discover the truth behind their overconsumption, as well as how to let go of what no longer serves them. Hi, Christine. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, so happy to be here.
Yay. I've read your book. I know a lot of people have read your book, and so I kind of want to talk about your book and a few other things with you. But when I was reading your book, I was surprised to learn that you have a background in environmentalism. You were a
hmm
policy advisor for the US Department of Energy. And so I think that that really helped to connect a few dots for me. And so,
hmm
like, one thing that I feel like is that minimalism is a form of sustainability. Would you also agree with that?
Absolutely. I think it is one of the most sustainable, intentional lifestyles that we can live, which is why, that can, to me, the connection is, everyone's like, you're jumping from energy law to, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's like all
Yeah,
connected, right?
right.
Um, it forces us to be very mindful of what we have, what we use, how we consume, right? And so, yeah, it's definitely a sustainable lifestyle. I've started to call it, starting to even move away from the term minimalism and call it like intentional living, mindful
Mhm.
living, sustainable
Mhm.
living, right? Because that's really what it is. I think that term minimalism it's just been opted into something more or less than what it is, right? And it's really it focuses so much more on the aesthetics rather than the practice of, living with less, right? And so,
Yes.
yes, I am in full on agreement with you that it
Yes.
is a
And so
sustainable
how
lifestyle.
exactly. So how did your like sustainable journey begin? Like what made you want to go into that, into your job of energy?
It's so funny. It was my first job right out of law school, and I was
Mhm.
just applying everywhere. I actually really wanted to do like EEO work. I really wanted, I also have a background in anti-racism work and equity, and so I really wanted to do EEO work. And then I'm in DC, and I'm just like applying. There's like that. I would say like those first few weeks where you're like, I'm gonna get the job of my dreams, and then you're like, I need to eat, right? And so
Right. Yeah.
I had reached that I need to eat phase where I was just like applying for anything that moved. And there was a small plaintiffs environmental law firm, and they reached out and they were like, "We got your resume. Like, same question you asked, like, why are you interested in energy and environmental law?" And I was like, I mean, obviously it applies to me. I was like, but I'm going to be honest, I don't know a single thing. I was like, but I'm willing to learn. And they
Yeah.
said, and we're willing to teach you. And this
Awesome.
was like early 2000s. This is when people were thinking about energy and environmentalism. They were just thinking about, people living off the grid, eating granola, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
um, and then like within the first, I would say maybe 3 years after I started that job, it just became a thing. Like renewable energy became an issue. Like it just, yeah. And I just ended up being one of the few Black women in energy and environmental law at the time. And so it allowed me to write my own sort of ticket. And that's what led me to government. But, it's a demanding field. There's a lot
Yeah.
of work to be done. There's a lot of work that won't happen in our lifetime, but our job is to really move the ball forward. And so, I got burnt out, right? But
Yeah.
it was a wonderful career, and I think it does mesh very well with the work that I do right now because it is one of intentionality.
Yes, yes, I love that. So you said that you got burnt out with your job, but like in your book, you were making, you talked about how you were making a lot of money. And so you
hmm
kind of like ended up buying, a bunch of
All the
stuff.
things.
Yes. And so as you started your minimalism journey, like what was kind of like the process with that?
I started with I just felt like I had too much stuff, right? I feel
Hmm.
like that's how a lot of people start, like I woke up that Saturday morning looking around like, oh my God, I have to clean again. Let me go buy some more bins. And then it's like, am I going to buy more things to hide the things? Like, let me just deal with
Hmm.
the things, right? And so that's kind
Hmm.
of how it started for me. Um, and again, just really caught up in the aesthetics of mainstream minimalism, right? Like we look
Yes.
at the photos on Pinterest and on Instagram and, in magazines, and we're just like, oh, of course, one chair in a vast room overlooking the ocean is going to look peaceful and calming, right? But it's not
Right.
the reality. Um, for a lot of us, and it's also not as serene as one might think, right? And so
Hmm.
I started really trying with mirroring a lot of the aesthetics that I saw online, and it
Yeah.
was only when I saw that this is just not going to work for
Yeah.
me. And I was like, oh, if this is minimalism, if I have to live in this like stark white home with nothing and one fork, one knife, one spoon, as I like to say, I was like, oh, this is not for me. And I
Right.
said, I am going to be the Afro minimalist because,
Yes.
history and culture is very important to me. And so that's really how my journey began. And I just started sharing things online because it was kind of like, man, if there are other, Black folks out there that are, interested in pursuing this lifestyle, much like me, had never seen anyone that ever looked like them doing it, let me be online and be a resource so
Hmm.
that they can see, like, here's what it looks like when you do it your way. And it just turned out that, millions of other people also like using color
Right. Yeah.
and being intentional in their space, right? And so, it's an honor to, be called a trailblazer and say that, I really sort of challenge mainstream minimalism in a way that other people had not before. And so I'm really proud of that. But yeah, I mean, like it's again, there's so much that I've learned from when I first started, and even from thinking I could do it in a weekend, right?
Hmm.
And so yeah, that's how my journey started. And as you know, there is no end. It is just you constantly, evolving, refining, growing, looking for new solutions, constantly letting go. And so yeah, that's where I am right now.
Yeah. It's so important to have that representation, because, like you said, we see those mainstream images of the neutrals and the like
Hmm.
bareness, but not everyone wants to live like that. Like, you want to live more simply, but you don't want to live that simply. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's
And
so great to see.
yeah, I was just gonna say, we take a lot from, other lifestyles. Like, I mean, I can't blame Scandi, sort of living
Yeah.
on mainstream minimalism, right? But they have those soft undertones and palettes for a reason, to
Hmm.
reflect light in their home because it's super dark during certain
Yeah.
times of the year, right? Or we
Right.
hear Marie Kondo say like, you can only have 20 books, and we're like, how can you only have 20 books, without realizing within that region in which she lives, yeah, you can't have a lot of books because it's super humid. And it's like we take little bits and pieces of things based on the aesthetics of it, and
Hmm.
not really understanding the meaning and intentionality right behind it. And then are so frustrated when it doesn't work for our lifestyles, and what we do. Right. So
Yes.
it's like, I don't know if we're meant to live in stark rooms, right?
Right.
In
Yeah.
this in our particular region of the world where we have an abundance of light. I
Yeah.
don't know if we need 20 books when we have all the space and all the books, right,
Hmm.
that aren't going to be
Hmm.
damaged by the humidity in the air, right? And so we sort of have to challenge and dig a little deeper into some of these practices and principles that we see online, or that we feel like, oh, I'm interested, I might like that, right? Like you got to know the why behind that, because
Yeah.
it may not even be applicable to your life.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's different for everybody.
Hmm.
Um, and so, speaking of, I kind of want to talk about your book and how, you have like the for the culture blurbs. So you
Hmm.
have a bachelor's and master's degree in African American studies, and
Yes.
so I found your
for the culture blurbs to be really interesting because they
Thank you.
go they go into the African American history and like how they've shaped our beliefs with consumerism.
Hmm.
So how would you say that or what would you say is the biggest factor that has played a part in how Black Americans in particular typically spend money?
Oh man, there is no one factor, right? I mean, I
Right.
think if we want to get to like the root of it, right, it's that
Yeah.
I mean, obviously this is not our home, right? Like this
Hmm.
is not
Hmm.
our true home, right? And so like the root cause of it is, really being, forcibly our ancestors forcibly taken from their homeland, being forced to labor in our country and other parts of the world, right? Ultimately, fighting and fighting for their independence only to be 200, 400, years behind,
Yeah.
in terms of economic equity, right? And so I think for so much of it for us is so rooted in that disruption in our history, right? We had a history before here, and I'm speaking specifically to Black Americans, right? Our
Hmm.
history did not start with slavery, right? And so, like, we are constantly in this place of trying to catch up, trying to make up, trying to assimilate into a dominant culture that really was never for us, is not for us, and is not rooted in who we are, right? And so there's
Hmm.
always sort of this constant conflict of, I mean, I like to say we are the original sustainability experts,
Absolutely.
right? Like this is my thing, right? And I'll say in a joking way and saying like, listen, the plastic bag issue, that's not our issue. We have all of
Yeah.
our plastic bags. That's y'all's, right? Like I can, you know, black folks can think of a million ways to use a plastic bag, right?
Hmm.
So that's like the ha ha ha, we could joke about it kind of thing, right? But historically, right? Always being forced to have less than, make do with, find a way to work around. But like this is ancestrally, right? I talk about blood memories a lot too. I know you hear me say that a lot. Like that sort of um, willingness, desire. We have an innate sort of it's within us that we know how to be sustainable. We know how to be intentional, right? And I think what we get challenged with is dominant culture telling
Yeah.
us, like, no, get all the things, have all the things, enjoy all the things, right? And so,
Hmm. Hmm.
the origin is us, it's the disruption in our history, and then there are a number of just micro choices and challenges that have, collectively impacted us as a whole, as a community, right? But I think what you're seeing is so many more Black folks really challenging, whether it's the narratives that we've been told about how to spend our money, whether it's, the fears that we have overcome based on, what our ancestors went through. And I mean, we're talking like 2 to 3 generations removed, right? We're not like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. It's like
Right.
my friend can say, I remember going to Mississippi, being in Mississippi with my grandmother and us picking cotton in the morning,
Yeah.
right? Like sharecropping,
Hmm.
like we're not that far removed. So I also want us to, extend ourselves a little compassion and grace when it comes to this work. But like I see people really doing the work, really wanting to understand and build generational wealth, right? Really challenging these notions of conspicuous consumption or keeping up with the Joneses, as we used to say, right? And really pausing and saying, like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Right. And
Yes.
I think for me, from what I'm seeing, this is like one of the first generations where I see that more on a collective level
Hmm.
than I did with my generation. Like my generation, if you were moving like that, you are an outlier. Something is wrong with you. You're weird. Why doesn't she wear that? Why doesn't she have that? Right. And I
Hmm.
think this generation is like, mm-mm, this is not working for me. I could live in a van and not have any debt and live a carefree life, and I'm going to do it. Right. And I think that
Yes.
is just a new beautiful space for Black folks, and I love it. Like, I love it. I'm here for it because so many of our challenges are trying to assimilate and get on a level playing field with dominant culture when we're literally hundreds and hundreds of years behind. And so it's time to sort of rethink, reimagine, and reforge just like a new way that works for us as a community.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree that this next generation, like millennials and Gen Z, have made more strides towards being more conscious about how they're spending money.
Hmm.
And like you said, trying to build generational wealth. So it is really
Yeah.
exciting to see
But
because
you know
and
what?
Mhm.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to
No,
say
it's
this
okay.
really quick. Like, it's also because they have a better understanding of it,
Yeah.
right? And I try and tell people this all because so much of the older generation, like there's this constant beating themselves up about why didn't I, why didn't I, why didn't I,
Yeah.
right? Like I grew up without no internet, right? Like there was no
Exactly.
internet. I remember when the first person in my neighborhood got a microwave. Like, listen, like technology is very, very new, right? And what it
Right.
did was allow us access to information that has been withheld from us intentionally, right? And
Mhm.
so when I grew up, I had to believe whatever I was told. I had to believe whatever was shown to me on television. I had to read whatever books were in my local library, right? That meant I had a very contained body of knowledge to work from, right?
Yeah.
And now these generations have access to information that, I mean, is unbelievable, right? That information even allows them to challenge some of the narratives that I wasn't able to challenge, right? So if I'm hearing, let's say, the older Black woman in my neighborhood having a conversation about, man, you can't trust the bank, just can't trust the bank with your money. So and so
Uh-huh.
had all their money at the bank. And, I mean, they were saving for years. And when they went to withdraw it, that white man told them they don't even have an account there, right? Like you're hearing that
Mm.
narrative, hearing that narrative.
Mhm. Mhm.
I had nothing to challenge that, right? I had friends in college that were still keeping money in their bra
Oh,
because of those narratives, right? And
right.
like, I'm 45 years old. I'm not 100.
Yes.
Right? And so like getting, I think depending on where you fall on that spectrum of, our ages and our experiences and our lived experiences rather, you have to extend yourself some grace because you can't beat yourself up for what you didn't know.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think, really keeping in mind that technology has allowed us intellectual and educational advancement too, right? That has made it look easier, seem easier for generations who were born into that technological era. So I just wanted to like throw that in
Yeah.
there because it is, you know, uh, yeah, it's tough, right? It's tough. There's a
Right.
lot to dismantle. There's a lot to dismantle, and challenge depending on your age, for sure.
Yeah, that's true. And in addition to better access to information, I think it's also there's more opportunities and more ways to make money. So,
Hmm.
rather than having to go to the same job for $40 or for 40 hours a week and making X amount of dollars, there's more potential to, earn more money. So I think that also plays a
Yeah,
factor.
for sure. You can start your business on. I mean, you could literally start a business
Yeah.
today if you wanted to, right?
Yeah.
Whereas that was an economic opportunity that just was not accessible to a lot of people even 20 years ago.
Right.
Right? Like you literally had to go to the bank, get a loan, try and figure out how, hope they would approve it, hope that, and it's just like, so yeah, all of that plays such an important role. And
Mhm.
Eric, honestly, I feel like that role also with that brings a different level of responsibility, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
right? Like, I think when I talk about individual and collective responsibility, that's what I mean, right? Like,
Right.
yeah, we have all this access now, and we have these opportunities, and, we're able to make changes and do certain things in ways that literally were not possible for our parents, not even our grandparents, our parents, right? And so we have an individual and collective responsibility to use and to do good, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Totally agree. So, as we were kind of talking about the past generations, and I guess, some people still do this now. Um, as we earn more money, we feel the need to buy more things, to buy luxury items and keep up as the Joneses, so they
Hmm.
say. So for people who are maybe, just kind of starting to realize that maybe they feel like, this is a problem, I want to change it. What are
Hmm.
some ways that they can go deep and try to reprogram that?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell folks to start with the inner work, right? Like it's really getting to the root cause of why you even believe you need to have that, right?
Hmm.
As I share in the book, so much of it starts with our childhood. So much of it starts with cultural and societal pressures and expectations. And I mean, that can be based on any part of identity, right? Like the woman who says, "Oh, I don't like shopping." And someone is like, "What do you mean you don't like shopping? All women like shopping."
Yeah.
Right? It's like so there's so many parts of our identities that get challenged and push us into this consumerism mindset, right? So I always tell people to start with doing that inner work, right? And the biggest thing that no matter where you discover that root cause, wherever that belief is coming from, right? Wherever that limiting belief is, where it's like, oh, I have to have this or I need to have that. We ultimately all have to get to the place where we understand that our value is not in what we have, it's in who we
Hmm.
are.
Yes.
And that, I mean, like, to me, like, once you are able to make that mindset shift, the world is, I mean, you just look at the world in a whole different way, right? But
Hmm.
because we live in a capitalistic society and we live in a society that is so driven by consumerism, right? So driven by what you can show people you have and like all of these different things, right? Like we have to constantly challenge that, right? And you literally, I don't care, put it on a sticky note, right? And write it on your bathroom mirror and say, like, my value is not in what I have, it's in who I am.
Hmm.
Because there's a lot of danger in putting your value, right? And your self worth and your self esteem. There's a lot of danger in having that rooted in a thing or what you're
Yeah.
wearing, right? Or where you live or what you drive, right? Because our things can be taken away from us at
Hmm.
any time through no
Hmm.
fault of our own, right? I mean, I literally was in a hit and run the other day, area
Oh no.
sitting in my parked car,
Oh
sitting in
gosh.
my parked car. Literally had just pulled up
Uh-huh.
and thank God I text my mom to say, "Hey, just made it safe, just made it home safely. Here, skirt, boom." Right? Just
Wow.
coming around the corner too fast, right? Do I love my car? I love my car. Yes, I love my car. Guess what? I have not been with my car in 4 weeks now. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Wow.
like our things can be taken away from us at any time. If my identity is rooted in that car and I get this loaner, my loaner is not my car, right?
Hmm.
I do love my car, but I'm not going to not drive
Right.
because I have to be in this loaner, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
not going to say like, "Ooh, I really want to go see so and so," but if they see me pull up in this loaner car, right? It's like
Hmm.
the value is in me showing up,
Yes.
right? The value is in me getting to where I need to go to do what I need to do, right? And so like I really want people to challenge that notion that their value is defined by what they have. It's just not true. It is just not true. It is something that has been placed on us in from many different sources for many different reasons, right? This is not just for
Hmm.
the economic benefit of others, right? Like there are other things that people have told us and said to us, right? Like for their own benefit, we have been sort of fed this lie that we have to have certain things to be seen as fill in the blank, and
Yes.
it's just not true.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so many people place so much value in the things that they have. And
Mhm.
not to call my mother-in-law out, but she is one of those people. And so, I feel like she has been making strides to try to do better and realize that she doesn't need all of these things. And I'm sure a
Mhm.
lot of people are also in her situation. So once you kind of come to the realization that, okay, I am not what I own. Um, and you kind of want to start downsizing and, getting rid of all of this excess, what
Hmm.
is the process of letting things go, especially when you
Yeah.
realize that you spent so much money on these things? Some of them still have tags on them. How do
Welcome
you,
to that was my life.
right? Yeah. How do you go through that?
Yeah, first of all, I'm glad you asked that question. And, again, extending some grace to your mother-in-law, given her
Uh-huh.
age, right?
For
And
sure.
and I think that's the other thing too, like when we do that inner work and we, start this acknowledgement process, right? Which is going to be step one. So this is all tied together, right? So when we start this acknowledging process, which is, hey, you know what? I have too much. Let me do a little digging and find out why, right? We start to understand that a lot of stuff has been like passed down to us generationally, right? So
Hmm.
thinking of your mother-in-law, maybe her parents were likely born during the Great Depression or,
Hmm.
like shortly there or something along those lines, right?
Right.
And so if you grew up in a time of scarcity, you either respond in two certain ways, right? You like are always extremely scarce because you never know when the rug is going to be pulled out from under you and you want to be able to pick up and go, right? Or you're like, I am going to live in abundance because I grew up with nothing and I want everything, right? And so
Hmm.
that's why it's like you have to get to those little individual unique challenges that have shaped your consumption, right? So that's step one. That's the acknowledgement phase. Step two is forgiving yourself, right? So this is my other struggle with mainstream minimalism is that we are not given a holistic framework to sort of help us move through, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
it's like so I have four steps. And I feel mainstream minimalism is like two steps. It's like acknowledge you have too much stuff. Two, let go.
Yeah.
If only it were that easy, right?
Hmm.
I'm like,
Hmm.
acknowledge you have to forgive yourself because if not, you're going to stay stuck in this space of woe is me. Look at how much money I spent. I was so stupid. I was so this. Like you just start
Hmm.
this really negative self-talk that you have to forgive yourself, right? In order and others, right? In order for you to move on to step three, which is the letting go process, right? I don't care what you do, right? Like it can be you can do the whole, like I'm gonna let go of one thing a day, or you can do like I'm gonna put everything in boxes, and if I don't have to go in this box in 3 months, I'm just gonna donate the box sealed and unseen, right? There's so many different approaches to letting go. You have to do what works best for you. What I and I think where you and I are definitely in alignment is that we never talk about step four, which is where's the stuff going?
Yes.
Where's
Right.
it going, y'all?
Hmm.
What are we doing with it, right? Like,
Hmm.
and so like that is the sustainability piece for us to say, I have to be intentional with even what I let go, right? Like,
Right.
I don't want this to go into a landfill. Are there organizations in my community that can benefit this? Are there friends and family members who can, benefit from this? Is there a kid that's going
Hmm.
to college? Is there a new couple, right? We talk about
Hmm.
buy nothing groups. We talk about local organizations that will come and pick it up for you, right? Like even
Yes.
Zappos has, they've partnered with Souls for Souls. They will send you the free shipping to
Oh,
mail the
wow.
label to ship it, right? Like there are
Yeah.
options outside of your trash, right? Because a
Yes.
lot of this stuff is not trash, which is why I'm always even mindful terminology matters, right? So I'm never like, oh, I'm about to just trash or I'm about to purge or I'm about to, right? It's like, I'm about to let go, right?
Yes.
I know these things may be able to benefit other people, right? A large part of waste in this country is F waste, which is, our furniture waste, right?
Hmm.
Perfectly good pieces, you know, they just don't aesthetically work the way you wanted to anymore, right?
Right.
You
Right.
know what? I'm tired of all this white furniture. I'm going to get brown, right? It's like,
Hmm.
what do we do? Like seeing, and I wish there was a way to do like tours where people could actually go to a landfill and
Yes.
see because there's
There
no
is no
way.
way. There's
Yeah,
yeah.
there's no way you would ever be able to consume
Right.
and just throw stuff away like that again
Yeah.
because you understand it has to go somewhere,
Yes.
right?
Exactly.
If it's not something that we are consuming, having, I mean, and you see how long a t-shirt can last. You
Mhm.
see how long a pair of shoes can last, right? To see a perfectly good desk, right? That could
Mhm.
benefit a group home, a community center, a school, a library, to see a perfectly good desk just right there in the landfill
Yeah.
because someone just wanted it to be a different color and didn't want to take the time, just that one extra minute to say,
Yeah.
who might be able to benefit from this, right? So that's step 4 for me. Pay it forward, I think, is where we really have to focus our energies and efforts when it comes to minimalism, letting go, intentional living, whatever you want to call it. Like that is a big part of it for me, is how we pay it forward with those things that we no longer need, use, and love, right? Because our goal should be to leave this earth better than we found it. We are
Mhm.
not doing a good job of that, right? And so it's like in
Yeah.
my lifetime, what are the choices that I can make, so that I can say I made the best decisions I could to just, give it my all to make sure I am not personally, my footprint, right, is not a part of this madness. And if we do that collectively, we have a real opportunity to bring about change, I think.
Yes, totally agree. I love that you keep that step 4 in there because it is so important to be conscious about how you are disposing of your waste. So I love that you're
Hmm.
spreading that message.
Thank you.
So when it comes to now you've let go of the things that you no longer need. And so I think a lot of people believe that with minimalism, now it means, okay, I can't buy anything new, you know?
Hmm.
So when you shared the reel that I did about the different sustainability books, there was one comment on there about, well, instead of buying new books, you should just go to the library and, rent the books so that like, why are you promoting buying new things?
uh,
So,
I
what?
love the peopling people, man. So many
I
people and
know.
people out there, right? Like, I mean,
Yes.
again, I mean, I remember reading that comment and just being
Mhm.
like, people are so these are the same people that are like, you're talking about sustainability. Why are you getting on a plane? And it's like, so you want
Yes.
me to walk to whatever country I'm trying to go to, not
Right.
understanding that the pair of jeans that they are wearing, right? They're fast fashion jeans
Mhm.
may have used more carbon emissions than this flight that I'm about to take, right? So much of
Hello.
it is people don't even understand how all of this works, right?
Yeah.
I think that you know, you're going to buy things, right?
Mhm.
I think you had a recent post about zero waste. And I was like, yes, right? Like these,
Yes.
there's all these little buzzwords, and I'm just like, y'all are really out here stressing yourselves out about stuff that number one is literally
Mhm.
not even possible, right? Like
Right.
the idea of zero waste, its origins was never for people to be like, I'm not going to have any waste ever. It was like, how can you take a thing and have it be zero waste, right? So like when I showed the strawberries, I showed the other day how to make strawberry leaf tea, right?
Mhm.
We cut
Mhm.
off the tops of our strawberries. The tops of the strawberries have a lot of nutrients. We can use them to steep and make tea. And
Yes.
then we can use the steeped tops to put in our compost. That's
Right.
an example of zero waste, right? And
Yes.
so, like, it
Mhm.
was supposed to, I initially sort of be this way to how can I have a thing that I don't use all of it and just dwindle it down as much as possible.
Right.
And obviously food is something that is more zero waste, right? But this idea that you're not going to ever buy anything, that you're not going to ever have to throw something in the trash, right? Or you see these people that like, I it for me it's the large mason jar that's like,
Oh my
this is
gosh.
all the trash that I used for an entire year, and I'm just like,
Yes. Yeah, right.
okay, girl, I'm not going to call you out, right? But like,
Uh-huh.
I think, again, this, if we're not careful, this lifestyle itself can be a form of conspicuous consumption. And I think
Yeah.
that's what you see a lot of online. You see the people like, look how few things I have. Look how little waste I have. Look, right? It's not a
Mhm.
braggadocious sort of way to live, right? It's just like, this is what you should be doing to live more sustainably, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
like, listen, I am all for buying books. I am also all for being intentional about how you buy books, right? And so, like, I'll share my experience. I used to love buying cookbooks. I mean, they're so beautiful to look at. They're so
Yeah.
pretty, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is just nothing like looking at a beautiful, aesthetically pleasing cookbook, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then when I was going through my decluttering and letting go, I'm like, I have a lot of cookbooks, and I may have only used one recipe out of this
Oh,
book,
yeah.
right? And so I said, going forward, unless it is a book that I really like, a cookbook that I know I am going to just like use a lot. I have a few of Bryant Terry's cookbooks that are like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Otherwise, I buy them as ebooks, right? And the
Yeah.
benefit of having cookbooks as ebooks is like when I'm in the store, I just pull up the ebook and get the recipes off the right. And so, like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not to say that you're never going to buy anything. It's not to
Right.
say that you're not going to buy books in
Mm-hmm.
particular, but it is to say that there are ways that you can be more sustainable, you know, and mindful of not having a whole lot of things, right? But if you are a chef or you're a cook or these are meals that you're going to use for your family, no one wants to be standing in the kitchen trying to like scroll and you know what I mean? Like then you
Right.
get the cookbook, right? But for
Yeah.
me, that was a way that I could have fewer books in my physical space, right? But
Mm-hmm.
still have access to the books, right? And so, again, this is why you have to make choices and decisions that work best for you. And I love that you shared those books, right? And I mean, I read most of them, and even within some of those books, they talk about this very thing, right? And challenging
Right.
this notion of it's not you're never buying anything again. It's not
Mm-hmm.
that you're going to live this zero waste life. And I mean, maybe there's a gold star somewhere that I don't know about, but like, I don't, like, I don't know what folks are out here, trying to get these, gold stars for doing the least and having the least, right? Like, the
Yes.
real benefit is how it affects you individually. And then, that trickle down collective benefit when we all make the best, choices and better sustainable choices for ourselves, right? Like, to me,
Yes.
I could be wrong, but if there's a gold star, let me know, okay? I want one.
Right? No, I totally agree. It all depends on your lifestyle, but at the end of the day, you should just be more intentional about the things that you are bringing into your home, you know?
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, you have your book, The Afro-Minimalist Guide to Living with Less, and you have
Yes.
the Less is Liberation workbook. And I
Mm-hmm.
know you're also working on something else new. So, like, just share with us, like, what you're working on, what you're excited about right now.
Yeah, I'm really excited about, really making less is liberation, moving it from being a mantra to a movement. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
it's time for us to really start challenging our lifestyles in a way that really make it more of a movement, right? And so
Hmm.
that's really something that I'm excited about right now. Just finished a novel. I'm always writing.
Yeah.
Even rethinking the workbook, all of the Less is Liberation boxes that I had, we have sold out of those, right? And
Awesome.
so really rethinking like, what is next even on that journey, right? And also just taking some time to be still. I think that's the thing when this work requires so much of you, right? It's constantly hearing people's stories. It's constantly helping them, dismantle unhealthy narratives and limiting beliefs, right? Like there's an emotional energy that comes with doing nonfiction and lifestyle work that I have learned. It is important for us to also pause and take care of ourselves as practitioners. And so my daughter is coming home from her freshman year of college
Oh,
tomorrow, and
wow.
I still can't believe her first year of college has gone by. And so I'm looking to just be more intentional with my time with her, with resting, with being easy and being good to myself. So, when fall kicks back up, I will be ready to be back on this movement, right?
Yes,
That is
yes.
my goal. So some
I
things that
love
I'm
that.
excited about.
Yeah, that's awesome. We definitely need time to rest and to spend
Yeah,
time with family.
for sure, for sure.
Well, Christine, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you. Our last question is, what does being a sustainable brown or black girl mean to you?
Ah, I mean, I know it sounds so cliche to say like it means everything to me, right? No, but I mean like I think it is, just a very powerful testament to who I am, to who my ancestors are, to the work and world that I'm leaving for my descendants, right? Like it's just it really does encompass everything that I choose to do and what I love, and so I guess it's
Yes.
everything to me,
Yes, I love it.
Ariel.
Thank you so much, Christine, for coming on. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank
Um,
you.
and if you guys have not read her book, you should definitely either go buy it or go listen to it or get it from the library, whatever works for your lifestyle. It's really great. So, thank you again for coming on.
Thank you so much. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Don't leave just yet. Click here to hear from another sustainable brown girl, or click here to watch the full playlist from this season.